The fox assistant dropped the food. She expected punishment, but I chose something gentler. The shattered moment. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall struck 7 as Nyla Emberwhisker carefully balanced the silver polish and cleaning cloths in her arms. Her cream-colored fur caught the amber light filtering through stained glass windows, russet patches along her forearms gleaming as she worked. The sprawling Ashwood estate had become familiar over the past 3 months, yet she still approached each task with meticulous precision. Old habits from her Warren upbringing died hard. Tonight was particularly important. Farron Ashwood's publisher, a stern gentleman named Mr. Griffith, was visiting to discuss the composer's upcoming symphony debut. Nyla had spent the afternoon ensuring everything was perfect. Fresh flowers in crystal vases, the drawing room immaculate, and now she was completing the final touches, dusting the antique collection displayed along the corridor shelves. Her long ears swiveled at the sound of male voices drifting from the study. The meeting was going well, she hoped. Master Theron had been anxious all week, his usually steady piano practice punctuated by frustrated sighs. She'd tried to ease his stress with lavender tea and his favorite honey cakes, but he remained distant, lost in creative turmoil. Reaching for a particularly ornate blue porcelain vase, Ming Dynasty, he'd mentioned once, Nyla's cotton tail twitched nervously. The piece sat on the highest shelf, requiring her to stretch on her toes. Her delicate fingers wrapped around the cool ceramic just as a door slammed somewhere in the house. The sudden noise startled her. The vase slipped. Everything happened in terrible slow motion. The precious antique tumbling from her grasp, her desperate lunge forward, fingers grasping empty air. The crash echoed through the corridor like thunder, porcelain exploding into countless glittering fragments across the polished hardwood floor. Nyla's entire body went rigid, ears flattening completely against her skull. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst through her ribs. The voices in the study stopped abruptly. No, no, no! Her legs gave out, knees hitting the floor amid the destruction. Trembling consumed her entire frame as footsteps approached. She knew what came next. She'd lived this moment before, in different homes, different circumstances. The shouting, the accusations of carelessness, the immediate dismissal with no references, leaving her destitute. In her Warren, such mistakes meant public shaming, hours of punishment labor, sometimes worse. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. A proper servant is invisible, Nyla. Mistakes make you visible, and visibility brings suffering. The study door opened. "What in blazes?" Mr. Griffith's sharp voice began, but Theron's deeper tone cut him off. "Please excuse me a moment." Footsteps drew closer. Nyla couldn't look up, couldn't move. She kept her gaze fixed on a particularly sharp shard near her knee, watching her own distorted reflection in its curve. Her whiskers quivered as she whispered hoarse apologies into the suffocating silence. "I'm sorry, Master Ashwood. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the damages. I'll work without wages. Please, I'm so sorry." Warm fingers gently touched her chin. Unexpected kindness. Theron Ashwood knelt beside his trembling housekeeper, his touch impossibly gentle as he tilted her face upward. Nyla's violet-tinged eyes, wide with terror, finally met his calm gray gaze. She expected fury. Instead, she found only concern etched across his handsome features, dark hair falling slightly over his forehead as he leaned closer. "Are you hurt?" His voice was soft, almost tender. The question bewildered her. What?" "Your paws. Did any shards cut you?" He was already examining her cream-furred hands, turning them carefully in his larger ones, checking for injuries with meticulous attention. The warmth of his skin against hers sent unexpected tingles up her arms. No, I don't think so. But the vase, Master Ashwood, that was a priceless—" was just an object. He released one of her hands to brush away a tear tracking through the soft fur of her cheek. The gesture was so intimate, so unexpected, that Nyla's breath caught. Objects can be replaced. You cannot. Behind them, Mr. Griffith cleared his throat impatiently. Ashwood, we really should continue our discussion. Our meeting is concluded for this evening. Theron's tone brooked no argument as he stood, helping Nyla gently to her feet. His arm steadied her waist when her legs wobbled. I'll send the draft revisions by courier tomorrow. Good evening, Griffith. The publisher huffed indignantly but gathered his papers, shooting disapproving glances at Nyla before departing. The front door closed with a decisive thud, leaving silence broken only by the ticking clock and Nyla's shallow breathing. Come, Theron said, guiding her away from the destruction. Careful of the pieces. In the kitchen, he sat her at the small servants' table, a boundary crossing that made her ears twitch uncertainly. No employer had ever invited her to sit in their presence. He moved around the space with surprising familiarity, filling a kettle and setting it on the stove, retrieving chamomile from the cupboard she'd organized just yesterday. Master Ashwood, you don't need to. I should be cleaning. You should be sitting. He glanced over his shoulder, a slight smile softening his usually serious expression. And perhaps we could dispense with master when it's just us? Theron is perfectly adequate. Her cotton tail twitched in agitation. That wouldn't be proper. Proper. He repeated the word thoughtfully, pouring steaming water over the chamomile leaves. The fragrant steam curled between them as he set the cup before her, then, most shockingly, sat across from her at the same table, cradling his own cup. Tell me, Nyla, where did you work before coming here? She wrapped her fingers around the warm porcelain, grateful for something to hold. The Blackwood household in the city. Before that, the Thornfield Manor. Before that, how many positions? 7 in 5 years. Shame colored her voice. I know that looks poorly on my character. Or poorly on your previous employers. He sipped his tea, gray eyes never leaving her face. What happened at these places? The memories threatened to overwhelm her. Small mistakes mostly, a dropped tray at the Blackwoods, accidentally entering a room when the mistress wanted privacy. At the Corvins, I spoke when not directly addressed. Her ears drooped lower with each confession. In my Warren, we are taught that mistakes bring consequences, discipline, punishment. I tried to be perfect, but I kept failing. Theron was quiet for a long moment, his expression darkening with something that looked like anger, but not directed at her. Did they hurt you? The gentle question broke something inside her chest. It was proper correction, she whispered automatically, the scripted response from years of conditioning. That's not what I asked. Nyla's paw trembled, tea rippling in her cup. She couldn't answer, couldn't admit the truth aloud, but her silence spoke volumes. Theron reached across the table, his larger hand covering hers with infinite care. You're safe here, Nyla. Accidents happen. They're part of living, part of being mortal and imperfect. That vase was beautiful, yes, but it held no memories for me, no sentimental value. It was purchased at auction simply because the decorator suggested it. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, the touch sending warmth flooding through her. I don't understand. Why aren't you angry? Because anger would be cruel and pointless. He squeezed her paw gently. You didn't break that vase deliberately. You were startled. It was an accident, and accidents deserve understanding, not punishment. The first real sob escaped her throat before she could stop it.
Growing closeness. 3 weeks passed like a gentle dream Nyla feared waking from. The shattered vase was never mentioned again. Theron had swept up the pieces himself that night, insisting she rest while he worked. The publisher's visit faded into distant memory as autumn deepened around the estate, painting the gardens in amber and crimson. But everything had changed in subtle, profound ways. Mornings now began with shared silence in the conservatory. Nyla would tend the exotic plants Theron's late wife had cultivated, orchids and night-blooming jasmine, delicate ferns that required constant attention. He would sit at the grand piano, fingers dancing across keys as melodies filled the glass-enclosed space. She found herself timing her watering to the rhythm of his compositions, her cotton tail swaying unconsciously to the music. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her instead of his sheet music, an expression on his face she couldn't quite decipher. It made her russet-patched fur feel warm, made her heart skip in ways that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. "You have natural rhythm," he observed one morning, startling her from her reverie. Droplets from her watering can splashed onto her apron. "The way you move, it's musical." "I'm just watering plants," but her ears fleshed pink beneath their cream fur. "You're dancing with them." He rose from the piano bench, approaching with that quiet confidence she'd come to recognize. "May I show you something?" Before she could answer, he was gently taking the watering can from her grasp, setting it aside. His hands found hers, positioning them as if they were dancing, though no music played. Nyla's breath caught as he stepped closer, close enough that his warmth enveloped her, close enough to see golden flecks in his gray eyes. "Music isn't just sound," Theron murmured, beginning to sway slowly. "It's movement, breath, heartbeat." His hand settled at her waist, the other still clasping her paw. "Can you feel it?" She could feel everything. The solid strength of his chest mere inches from hers, the way his fingers splayed across her lower back, the thundering of her own pulse. "Theron," his name escaped as barely a whisper. They moved together in silence, circling slowly between the ferns and orchids. Nyla's tail brushed against his leg, and she felt him inhale sharply. The air grew thick with unspoken things, with possibilities that servants and employers weren't supposed to explore. "I should finish the watering," she managed, but made no move to pull away. "Yes," he agreed, but his arms tightened fractionally. "You should." Neither of them moved. The grandfather clock in the distant hall chimed 9, breaking the spell. Theron stepped back carefully, and Nyla immediately felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. He cleared his throat, running a hand through his dark hair, a nervous gesture she'd never seen before. "I have correspondence to attend to," he said, voice slightly rough. "Will you bring tea to the study around 11? "Of course." She curtsied automatically, then felt foolish for the formality after what they'd just shared. He paused at the conservatory door, glancing back. "Nyla, thank you for the dance." After he left, she stood trembling among the plants, one paw pressed to her racing heart. What was happening between them? What dangerous line were they approaching? The days that followed brought more of these moments. Casual touches that lingered, conversations that stretched late into evening, smiles shared across rooms that felt intimate despite the physical distance. Theron began leaving handwritten notes with her morning duties. "The roses you arranged yesterday were lovely," or "Thank you for the lavender sachets. I slept better than I have in years." Nyla responded in kind, preparing his favorite meals with extra care, leaving fresh wildflowers on his desk, ensuring his favorite reading chair always had perfect lighting and a warm blanket draped across its arm. One evening, while organizing his sheet music in the study, their fingers brushed over the same page. Both froze. The parchment crinkled slightly under their joined touch as neither pulled away. Nyla's heart hammered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Theron's thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand. "Nyla." She looked up, meeting his gaze. The longing there matched her own, raw and vulnerable and terrifying. "Yes?" Her voice barely functioned. He lifted his free hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her jawline, tucking a strand of cream fur behind her long ear. The gentleness of the gesture made her eyes flutter closed. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Her eyes snapped open. I'm your housekeeper. You're a woman who's brought light back into this empty house. You've made me remember what it feels like to want to compose, to create, to simply exist rather than merely survive. Farron, we can't, this isn't, but her protests died as he reached into his waistcoat pocket with his free hand, withdrawing a small wildflower, the same species she'd left on his desk. "I preserved it," he admitted, color rising in his cheeks, like some lovesick fool. "I've been carrying it for a week, trying to find the courage to—" trailed off, then deliberately tucked the flower behind her ear, fingers trailing through her soft fur. "Tell me to stop, Nyla. Tell me this is inappropriate, that I'm your employer and this crosses every boundary. Tell me, and I will. I'll step back and we'll never speak of it." Her breath came in short gasps. Every lesson from her Warren screamed that this was forbidden, dangerous, impossible. But her heart, her treacherous, hopeful heart, sang a different song entirely. "I can't," whispered. "Can't what?" "Can't tell you to stop." Her paw rose tentatively, touching his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing as wildly as her own. "Because I don't want you to." The smile that transformed his face was incandescent.
Confession under stars. The first frost arrived on a crystalline October night, painting the estate gardens in silver moonlight. Nyla stood at her bedroom window, unable to sleep, watching her breath fog the glass. Below, the maze of hedgerows and flower beds she tended daily looked ethereal under the stars, transformed into something from a fairy tale. A soft knock at her door made her ears swivel. Her heart knew who it was before she opened it. Farron stood in the hallway, still fully dressed despite the late hour, a wool shawl draped over his arm. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted, gray eyes searching hers. "And I saw your light still burning. Would you walk with me?" Every proper instinct said she should refuse. Servants didn't take midnight strolls with their employers. But propriety had been crumbling between them for weeks now, dissolved by lingering glances and accidental touches that felt anything but accidental. "Let me get my coat," she whispered. The garden was transformed at night. Gravel paths crunched softly beneath their feet as they walked side by side, not quite touching, but close enough that Nyla felt the heat of him in the cold air. Farron draped the shawl around her shoulders without asking, his hands lingering briefly on her arms. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted, gray eyes searching hers. "And I saw your light still burning. Would you walk with me?" Every proper instinct said she should refuse. Servants didn't take midnight strolls with their employers. But propriety had been crumbling between them for weeks now, dissolved by lingering glances and accidental touches that felt anything but accidental. "Let me get my coat," she whispered. The garden was transformed at night. Gravel paths crunched softly beneath their feet as they walked side by side, not quite touching, but close enough that Nyla felt the heat of him in the cold air. Farron draped the shawl around her shoulders without asking, his hands lingering briefly on her arms. "I used to walk these paths with Eleanor," he said quietly, referring to his late wife for the first time since Nyla had arrived. "After she died, I couldn't bear to come out here. Everything reminded me of her laughter, her joy in simple growing things." Nyla's cottontail drooped sympathetically. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude on those memories by tending her gardens." "No." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Moonlight silvered his dark hair, made his features look carved from marble. "No, you didn't intrude. You
You breathed life back into them, into me. His hand rose, hesitating near her face. Is this presumptuous? Should I not speak so openly? She caught his hand in both of hers, holding it against her cheek. The intimacy of the gesture made them both tremble. You've only ever shown me kindness, Theron. From the moment I shattered that vase, you've treated me with more gentleness than I've known in my entire life. Her voice cracked. You've never once made me feel small, or worthless, or disposable. You've made me feel seen. Because you are. His other hand mirrored the first, cradling her face between his palms. You're extraordinary, Nyla. Your strength, your resilience, the way you find beauty in small moments, the way you hum while arranging flowers, how your nose twitches when you're concentrating on a recipe, how your entire being softens when you tend the jasmine because you know it was Eleanor's favorite. His thumbs stroked gentle circles on her cheeks. I see all of you, and what I see astounds me. Tears gathered in her violet-tinged eyes. I'm just a rabbit woman from a poor warren. I have nothing to offer someone like you. You've already given me everything. The words were fierce, passionate. You've given me purpose again, reason to compose music instead of drowning in grief. Mornings I actually look forward to, evenings that don't feel hollow and endless. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. You've given me hope that my heart isn't as dead as I thought it was. The confession hung between them, luminous and fragile as the frost coating the grass. Nyla's breath came in visible puffs, mingling with his in the narrow space between their lips. Theron, I'm afraid, she whispered. In my world, someone like me doesn't... We don't... This isn't how stories like mine end. Then let's write a different story. His nose brushed against hers, a question, a plea. Let me prove to you that mercy and kindness aren't rare gifts, but what you deserve every single day. Let me show you what it means to be cherished. I don't know how, she admitted brokenly. I don't know how to accept this, to believe it's real. Then learn with me. His lips ghosted across her forehead, tender and reverent. I'm terrified too, Nyla. Terrified of dishonoring Eleanor's memory, terrified of the judgment we'll face, terrified of being vulnerable again. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. But I'm more terrified of losing you, of never knowing what we could be together. A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with the cold. What are we doing? Choosing each other, he said simply. If you'll have me. If you want this. Nyla's paw trembled as she reached up, fingers tangling in his dark hair. I want this, she breathed. I want you. Heaven help me. I think I've wanted you since the moment you knelt beside me and asked if I was hurt instead of caring about a broken vase. The smile that broke across his face was pure joy. Then we are both fools together. The very best kind, she agreed. They stood there beneath the wheeling stars, holding each other close, hearts beating in synchrony. When Nyla stumbled slightly on loose gravel, Theron caught her immediately, arms encircling her waist, pulling her flush against him. The sudden full-body contact made them both gasp. Nyla. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Her whiskers brushed his jaw as she tilted her face up. Please, she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for, knowing only that the space between them felt unbearable. He understood anyway. His hand slid up to cup the back of her neck, fingers threading through her soft fur, and slowly, giving her every chance to retreat, he lowered his lips towards hers. The first touch was electric, gentle, questioning, sweet enough to make her knees weak. Her small noise of surprise melted into a sigh as she pressed closer, her tail wrapping instinctively around his leg, anchoring them together. Theron's other arm tightened around her waist as he deepened the kiss, still tender but growing more confident as she responded. her paws fisted in his shirt, pulling him impossibly closer, and he made a low sound of pleasure that vibrated through her entire being. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and flushed, Nyla buried her face against his chest, feeling his heart thundering beneath her cheek. That was... She couldn't find words. Perfect, he finished, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, between her ears. You're perfect. They stood there entwined in the frost-silvered garden, two souls who'd found unexpected solace in each other's arms, unwilling to let the moment end.
Love's gentle embrace. Morning light streamed through the conservatory windows, painting everything in shades of honey and gold. Nyla was already among the orchids when Theron found her, as had become their ritual. But today felt different, charged with the weight of last night's confessions and that earth-shattering kiss that had changed everything. "You're here early," he said softly, approaching with 2 cups of tea. She accepted hers with a shy smile, their fingers brushing deliberately. "I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying." "Every moment," he finished, setting his cup aside to take both her hands in his. "So did I." They stood there, palms pressed together, fitting perfectly despite their differences. Theron studied their joined hands, his long musician's fingers interlaced with her smaller, fur-covered ones, and the tenderness in his expression made Nyla's breath hitch. "I need to tell you something," he said, voice serious, "and I need you to truly hear me, not the frightened girl who expects punishment for breathing wrong." Her ears twitched nervously, but she nodded. "I'm in love with you, Nyla Emberwhisker." The declaration was simple, direct, devastating in its honesty. Not with some idealized version, not with a convenient companion to ease my loneliness. With you, your strength, your kindness, your terrible habit of reorganizing my sheet music in ways that make no musical sense but perfect aesthetic sense. His smile was warm. The way you talk to the plants, how you hoard extra sugar cubes for your evening tea, how fiercely you protect anything you deem worth caring for. Tears streamed down her furred cheeks. "Theron, let me finish." He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each knuckle reverently. "I know society will judge us. I know there will be whispers about propriety, about the difference in our stations, about a human and a rabbit woman building a life together. I know your Warren will likely disapprove, and some of my peers certainly will." His gray eyes blazed with determination. "I don't care. None of that matters more than this, more than us." "I love you too," she whispered, the words tumbling out like prayers. "I've been so afraid to admit it, afraid this was some dream I'd wake from. You've shown me what I'm worth, that I deserve gentleness and respect, and..." Her voice broke. "And love, real love, not conditional acceptance based on perfect service. You deserve everything," he said fiercely, pulling her close. "Every kindness, every joy, every soft word and tender touch. You deserve to wake up every morning knowing you're cherished exactly as you are." She pressed her face into his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent, sandalwood and ink and home. "What do we do now?" "Now?" He pulled back enough to tilt her chin up, his smile radiant. "Now I ask if you'll stay with me, not as my housekeeper, but as my partner, my equal, the woman I want to build a future with, compose symphonies for, grow old beside." "Yes," she breathed, 1,000 times yes. His kiss was different from the one they'd shared in the moonlit garden, less tentative, more certain. His hands framed her face as his lips moved against hers with growing passion, and she rose on her toes, arms wrapping around his neck, her tail swishing with pure happiness. When they broke apart, Theron was grinning. "Your tail gives away every emotion, did you know that?" "Your ears turn red when you're flustered," she countered, delighted to see them doing exactly that. "Did you know that?" He laughed, a sound she'd grown to treasure, and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the conservatory while she squealed in surprise and joy.
They tumbled onto the cushioned bench beneath the jasmine, breathless and tangled together, her head tucked perfectly beneath his chin. "I was thinking," Theron murmured, fingers combing gently through her fur, "perhaps we could take a trip, visit the coast. Let me show you the ocean. Eleanor and I never made it there, but I've always wanted to see it." "Making new memories," Nyla said softly, understanding the significance. "Not replacing old ones, but building something uniquely ours." "Exactly." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Will you come with me? Let me court you properly, take you to see beautiful places, introduce you to my world, not as my employee, but as the woman who holds my heart." She tilted her face up, capturing his lips in a sweet, lingering kiss. "I'll go anywhere with you," she promised against his mouth, "as long as we are together." They spent the morning there, trading kisses and whispered dreams, planning a future neither had dared imagine weeks ago. The conservatory filled with their quiet laughter, with the rustle of her fur against his skin, with the profound peace of two wounded souls finally finding their home in each other. Outside, autumn wind scattered golden leaves across the estate grounds. Inside, spring bloomed eternal in two hearts learning to trust in mercy, in second chances, in love's transformative power. Theron's fingers traced idle patterns on Nyla's arm as she nestled against him. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For dropping that vase," his smile was tender when she pulled back to stare at him in shock. "For giving me the chance to choose kindness over anger. For showing me that the walls I'd built around my grief were also keeping out light and love and life." He cupped her face gently. "For being brave enough to stay, to trust, to love me back." Nyla's eyes shimmered with fresh tears, happy ones this time. "Thank you for showing me I was worth saving, that mistakes don't define me, that I deserve to be treated with gentleness. Always," he promised, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of tea and tears and absolute certainty. They stayed intertwined as the sun climbed higher, neither willing to break the spell, both finally understanding that true love wasn't built on fear or perfection, but on mutual vulnerability, unconditional acceptance, and the radical choice to be gentle when the world expected harshness.